Welcome, legends. This is News and Rings, bringing you nonstop WWE news, match results, and inside scoops. Hit subscribe and let's dive straight in. The locker room went quiet, completely silent. Every eye turned toward the door as CM Punk stepped in, championship glinting under the lights. Moments before, he just reclaimed the spotlight in one of the most intense victories of his career. But what came next changed everything. This wasn't a victory speech. This was a message, sharp, unapologetic, and aimed at the entire WWE roster. The energy backstage felt like a storm about to break. What Punk said that night wasn't about celebration, it was about transformation, and the entire wrestling world felt it. A return that shook the system. CM Punk's return to WWE had already sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. Fans who had waited nearly a decade to see him back in a WWE ring were rewarded with a moment that felt impossible only a few years ago. But Punk didn't just come back for nostalgia, he came back with purpose. After years of controversy, hard lessons, and personal growth, he walked into Survivor Series like a man with unfinished business. His victory that night wasn't just about holding gold, it was about reclaiming identity. Every cheer, every camera flash carried the weight of history. WWE had opened its doors once again to one of its most outspoken and complex figures, and now the company, and the locker room, had to brace for what that really meant. CM Punk was home, and he was here to lead, not follow. The moment the locker room fell silent. Backstage after the match, tension filled the air. The energy that usually follows a championship win, handshakes, congratulations, laughter, was replaced with quiet awe. CM Punk entered the locker room with confidence, his championship resting casually over his shoulder, and the room instantly froze. It wasn't fear, it was respect mixed with uncertainty. Punk had always been outspoken, a leader who spoke from conviction even when it made others uncomfortable. And as he looked around at the roster, young and old, everyone sensed something was coming. Without raising his voice, Punk began to speak. What he said wasn't cruel or dismissive, it was honest. He talked about dedication, about earning respect the hard way, about remembering what makes wrestling matter. In that silence, people weren't just listening to words, they were feeling the challenge behind them. A declaration, not a speech. What Punk delivered that night wasn't a promo, it wasn't an act, it was a declaration. He told everyone that holding the championship wasn't the end of his story, it was the beginning of a new one. Those close to the scene said he spoke with calm intensity, reminding the roster that championships aren't gifts, they're responsibilities. His message wasn't meant to divide, but to demand excellence. Punk talked about legacy, about how every generation has to prove itself, not by talking louder, but by performing better. He reminded everyone that passion and discipline are what keep wrestling alive. The speech felt raw, honest, and uncomfortable at times, not because it attacked anyone, but because it exposed truths everyone knew but rarely said aloud. When Punk finished speaking, the room was quiet again, not out of fear, but reflection. The division within the locker room. The reactions were mixed, as they often are when truth meets pride. Some veterans reportedly nodded in silent approval, recognizing in Punk the same fire that once drove them. They understood his intensity and respected his demand for higher standards. But for some of the younger wrestlers, his words hit differently. To them, Punk represented the old guard, the past trying to control the future. It wasn't hostility, it was generational tension. Punk had unintentionally drawn a line between eras, those who built the foundation and those eager to redefine it. Yet in that friction lies evolution. The great thing about WWE's locker room is that disagreement often fuels greatness. That night, while emotions were high, a new competitive spirit began to build. It wasn't about who was right or wrong, it was about who would rise to the challenge next. The message behind the madness. For those who followed Punk's career, his passion has always been his double-edged sword. He's never been one to sugarcoat his thoughts or hide behind politeness when truth needed to be said. What people sometimes mistake for arrogance is often conviction. That night backstage, his message wasn't, "I'm better than you." It was, "Let's be better, all of us." The difference matters. Punk understands that WWE thrives when competition is real, when every performer pushes the other to new heights. His return has already reignited that atmosphere. Even those who disagreed with his tone couldn't deny his impact. The conversation he started that night spread far beyond the locker room. It reached production crews, writers, executives, and most importantly, the fans. Whether people loved or hated what he said, nobody could ignore it, and that's exactly what great leaders do. WWE's gamble and the creative crossroads behind the scenes, WWE officials found themselves walking a delicate line. Bringing Punk back was always a high-stakes decision, one that promised massive ratings but came with unpredictable consequences. Now, management had to decide how to channel this energy into storytelling without losing control of the locker room dynamic. It's a balance they've faced before, turning real tension into great television. The difference now is that Punk's maturity, shaped by years away from WWE, has added depth to his perspective. He's not the rebellious underdog anymore. He's the seasoned veteran with something to prove. Triple H and the creative team know that if handled right, this situation could spark one of the most compelling eras in years. But they also know that Punk's influence must be guided carefully. He's a storm, and storms, when harnessed, can build or break empires. A new era of motivation. If you strip away the headlines and social media noise, what happened in that locker room was pure motivation. Punk wasn't tearing anyone down, he was daring them to step up. His words reminded everyone why they first fell in love with this business: the hunger, the storytelling, the art of proving yourself night after night. Wrestling, at its best, thrives on authenticity, and Punk's authenticity is unmatched. Since his speech, reports suggest an increased energy in training sessions and creative meetings. Younger stars are brainstorming harder, veterans are mentoring more openly, and the entire atmosphere feels alive again. That's the Punk effect. He challenges people to rediscover their edge. Whether you agree with his delivery or not, his passion reignited something WWE needed: that sense of urgency, of purpose, of fire that pushes greatness forward. Conclusion: CM Punk didn't just win a championship, he reignited an entire culture. His message backstage wasn't about ego, it was about legacy. He reminded everyone that being part of WWE means representing a tradition of resilience, artistry, and competition. Some will resist his methods, others will rally behind him, but everyone will have to react. And that's how revolutions in wrestling begin, not with violence or anger, but with a statement that forces the world to take notice. As the weeks unfold, every promo, every match, every decision will carry that same undercurrent of tension and possibility. Whether you're a fan cheering him on or a critic waiting for him to fall, one truth remains: CM Punk has once again made professional wrestling must-see storytelling. And as always, he's done it on his own terms, unapologetically and completely himself.